Oh, hey there. So in the Bible, Jesus tells us that if your eye offends you, gouge it out, because it's better to go into heaven missing an eye than to go to hell forever. Then he says, if your foot offends you, cut it off, because it's better to go into heaven with one less foot than it is to go to hell and burn forever. If your hand offends you, then you cut it off. It's better to go into heaven with one less hand than it will be to burn in hell forever. And I've heard a lot of people talk about this over the years, but several years back, our pastor said, okay, here's my suggestion. Not an analogy at all. If your eye offends you, literally gouge it out. And they're like, well, hold on, pastor. That seems pretty extreme. And he's like, it is pretty extreme. So I'll tell you what, rather than going to hell, you do whatever extreme thing you have to do just short of cutting your eye out, because it's that serious. If your eye is putting you in places, looking at things that you shouldn't look at, just short of gouging it out, do whatever extreme radical thing you've got to do to not keep doing that behavior so that you don't go to hell. If your hand is doing bad things, cut it off. You're like, well, hold on now, I don't want to cut my hand off. You're like, of course you don't. Nobody wants to cut their hand off. Do whatever radical thing you've got to do, whatever extreme thing you've got to do in your life to change that behavior just short of cutting your hand off, because it matters that much. Same thing. If your feet offend you, if you're going to places that you should not go and you can't seem to stop yourself, cut your feet off. You're like, I don't want to cut my feet off. Well, of course you don't. So stop doing the bad thing, right? That's the whole message, is like, don't just casually like, well, I tried once, I can't help it, I was born this way, or whatever the lame excuse you come up with. Take it seriously. This is serious stuff. So take it seriously and do whatever extreme thing you've got to do. If that means, hey, look, I'm around a bunch of drug addicts and I cannot get off drugs because I too am a drug addict, unless I get away from this crowd, unless I leave the state, or whatever you got to do, go to rehab or something, do it. Just short of cutting your eyes out and cutting your hands off and cutting your feet off, like do whatever extreme thing you've got to do to get out of that situation, right? If you're like, I just can't stop myself from doing fill in the blank bad thing, do whatever extreme thing you've got to do to stop doing it, because it matters that much. I say this in love.